The timeline for racial justice in this country reveals a history of strides and setbacks.
He was not dressed. In fact, he was dirty. He didn't have on any shoes. And he asked for a glass of water and got it immediately. And so I asked her for an ice cream sundae, and she said, well, we don't serve niggers here.
We went to the swimming pool, and it was a public swimming pool, and I was the only dark-skinned person there. And some of the kids started, calling me a squaw and dirty Indian, and said they didn't want me in the pool because I might get the water dirty.
I guess I must have been teased about my skin color, and not understanding that all. I grew up in an all-white neighborhood and went to school with the same kids from elementary school on up. And remembering my friend defending me and saying, well, she's always out in the sun. That's why she's so brown.
And he and I went to this dance together. Was the only interracial couple at this dance. And I happened to run into another young man who lived next door to my grandparents at this dance. And made my way up to him and quickly asked him, please don't tell my grandparents I was here and who I was with.
Struggle is something we avoid, yet as children of Christ, struggle is something to which we are called. For well over 100 years, United Methodist women have stood with those in the margins, creating safe havens through charity for women, children, and youth, as well as drafting and promoting legislation for systemic change. United Methodist women continue to live into a shared commitment to Christ as they struggle towards racial justice. The developing Methodist Church was heavily involved in missionary work, most notably with Native Americans, including Alaska Natives, and immigrant groups including Mexican, Chinese, Japanese, Filipino, and Puerto Ricans. Often, these ethnic groups were segregated as objects of mission and not fully vested members of the Methodist community. Something different happened among the women. Methodist women's missionary societies also focused much of their work on creating innovative mission programs for marginalized groups in this nation. Yet, Methodist women invited these sisters to join in the struggle. The women were change agents, both in the church and in this country.
In 1947, a national seminar recommended that the Women's Division place blacks in leadership positions and employ them on staff. It created a special committee on racial practices, out of which grew one of the division's most significant contributions to the national struggle for racial justice. Pauli Murray, shown here with Thelma Stevens, wrote States' Laws on Race and Color, a 1951 survey of the discriminatory laws in every state in the Union. It was this same committee that first proposed the formulation of a charter of racial policies and practices. In 1952, the charter was submitted to the jurisdictions and conferences for ratification. It was still in the process of ratification at the 1954 Assembly when the Supreme Court handed down its decision in Brown versus the Board of Education, making segregation in public education unconstitutional. Pauli Murray's book, published by the Women's Division, had been a major source of research for this Supreme Court in its deliberations. The civil rights movement had begun. Over the next years, Methodist and Evangelical United Brethren women from across the country worked to implement the charter in their local, district, and conference programs. And as the civil rights movement gained momentum, many of them joined it. Some marched. Others made coffee and sandwiches for marches. Some wrote letters and talked to their congressmen or worked in local politics or on local school boards. They also made social policy statements protesting the exploitation of Native Americans and urging women to study the situation and take action wherever possible. They urged revisions in immigration laws that would remove policies that discriminated on the basis of race. They supported farm workers in the West and mill workers in the South. And gradually, as they added staff and board members of other races to their number, they changed themselves. In 1962, women in the Methodist Church revised their charter to speak more to the larger church and to the world. In 1964, in Pittsburgh, while large numbers of Methodists protested the continuance of the central jurisdiction, the second charter of racial policies was adopted by the General Conference as a charter applying to the whole denomination. And at long last, in 1968, the central jurisdiction was abolished, just as Methodist women joined with Evangelical United Brethren women to form the Women's Division of the Board of Missions of the United Methodist Church, and in 1972, United Methodist Women.
Today, many may think that the struggle towards transformation has ended. United Methodist women know that it is a time to work harder, to work smarter than ever before.
What I would say about this economy is probably quite redundant. We lost 40% of the value of the market in a 10-day period. I mean, that's hitting everyone hard. It's panicking people. I call capitalism a wolf. You know, get the maximum profit, go after any excess value and grab it as profit. Regulation is the dentist. So the regulation basically dulls the fangs of the wolf. The wolf needs to go back to the dentist for some more filing down. Basically, the wolf hadn't been to the dentist in a while, and we see that. And that's the issue. So we're looking at reviewing the nature of predatory capitalism, but we're also looking, I think, at, even as we talk about massive social change, we're talking about micro remedies for people who are basically in a lot of pain.
The question that we're facing, really, when it gets right down to the nub of it, is what is an American? What is an American? And that's really the driving force behind this current kind of shift in racism in the country. It's a shift that says, indeed, Americans are white folk. And we've got to really work with all of our friends and neighbors and congregants, wherever we are, to really, you know, not maybe to have that level of conversation, but be conscious about the fact that Americans are folk of lots of different backgrounds and colors and nationalities and ethnicities. Americans are folks who lived in North America, Central America, and South America. Okay? That's who Americans are.
Struggle is not a comfortable place. Yet, as children of a God that calls each one of us to serve the other, the less fortunate, the one outside the margins, it is what we choose.